Good evening, friends. Welcome to the India Power Talk. I am humbled with your encouraging messages on the previous talks, and I sincerely thank you all for the same. Several of you have personally called me and offered a lot of valuable suggestions and inputs, and I'm sure I'll take them on board very quickly. I would certainly try to take them on board. As you know, India Power Talk, in association with the Indian Chamber of Commerce, the oldest chambers in India, and Law Sikho, the India's largest online legal education company, is an effort to create an easily accessible digital reservoir of insights, strategies, and constructive suggestions from the international leaders on how to revive Indian economy. We would be inviting entrepreneurs, economists, professors, investment bankers, scientists, lawyers, chartered accountants, and professionals having experience from diverse sectors who would contribute on the subject. As we all know, global lockdown due to coronavirus continues to be the biggest worry for the medical, social, political, and business fraternity. We may be able to find medical solution, but the economic impact could be huge, wide, and deep, and therefore it is necessary to continue to find solutions and opportunities to survive, and not only survive but also thrive post COVID-19. And to talk on the insight, strategy, and experience, we have today a highly experienced and distinguished, truly exceptional leader, Ronald C. Gunnell from Salt Lake City, US. Uh, but before I invite Mr. Gunnell to speak his mind, let me give a short introduction. In 1986, Ron co-founded Health Benefits America (HBA), which became the largest benefits outsourcing company in the United States. HBA provided services to over 50 of the America's largest and respected Fortune 100 companies, managing the healthcare of millions of active and retired employees. In 2014, Ron founded the Broad Street Group, which provided international consulting services with offices in the United States, Sao Paulo, Brazil, Mumbai, India. In 2019, the Broad Street Group was converted to a trust and TAT Worldwide LLC was formed to carry on the work of the Broad Street Group. TAT stands for Truth Alone Triumphs. With over 30 years of business experience and nearly 20 years in the entertainment industry, he serves on a number of educational and arts board, including Hale Center Theatre, Utah. He has been heavily involved in charitable and volunteer work, including Rising Star Outreach in India, Mentors International, Philippines, Honduras, Guatemala, Peru, Salvador, Operation Kids. I would once again thank you, Mr. Gunnell, for your valuable time today for the India Power Talk. To begin with, may I request you to kindly open the discussion with your initial remarks on surviving and reviving post COVID-19.
Well, thank you, Mr. Padar, for this wonderful invitation to address India Power Talk and in association with the India Chamber of Commerce. Before I begin my remarks, I would like to thank Ashok Joshi, my dear friend and colleague, who has made such a significant impact, not only on me, but on the lives of Indians and people all over the world. And finally, to my dear friend and associate, King Hussain, born in Bombay, India, and whose business acumen is legendary as founder of the largest metal building construction company in the United States. Throughout his life, King has remained true to his India roots: humility, noble character, integrity, hardworking, a generous nature, and in many more qualities I've witnessed, all are his hallmarks. My first trip to India 12 years ago was not as a tourist, but as a business leader who had been invited to visit leprosy colonies in southern India. I was not prepared for the emotional connection I would experience with the people of India, and particularly the leprosy affected. My senses to what I witnessed and experienced on my first trip were heightened to a level so high that I knew I would be returning to India, a country I immediately fell in love with and connected to. I made over 50 trips in the past 12 years for charitable work, and most recently consulting large companies in India, including Reliance Technologies subsidiary Geo Platforms located in Mumbai. There's no question that in my lifetime, COVID-19 has affected the world with such damaging impact. Stock markets tumbling, healthcare infrastructure stretched to its limits, and unemployment skyrocketing to unprecedented levels, which
Absolutely.
has not been seen since the Great Depression. This international pandemic has stopped in its tracks business as usual and put the world on notice that life and how we conduct ourselves will be changed for years to come. It's funny because I had important meetings in Bangalore, Mumbai, Chennai, Hyderabad, New Delhi this very month, all canceled because of the worldwide lockdown that has forced all of us to rethink how we conduct not only our business lives, but our own personal lives as well. We're still in the throes of COVID-19, and its grip is still holding us hostage at so many levels. We need to immediately reevaluate how we conduct business internally and externally, and how to prepare for the new normal that is in front of us. If we don't act now and plan, I'm afraid we will suffer consequences that may not be recoverable.
Absolutely. I'm so thrilled and glad to know that you have made like 50 trips to India. I'm really pleased to know that, I must say. You are absolutely right, Mr. Gunnell. We need to plan and act now. In fact, yesterday on a webinar, I was talking and I mentioned that your plan B or C may become plan A.
Right.
I guess we would suffer irreparable damage if we don't act now. May I now, request you to elaborate in some detail your experience in resolving such situations, and in particular, what would be your advice to survive and revive post COVID-19?
Mr. Padar, my advice and perspective from a business standpoint comes from my own experience when I co-founded HBA. I never dreamed that we would build America's largest benefits outsourcing company. As you mentioned earlier, we managed healthcare benefits for over 50 of America's largest Fortune 100 companies. And working in the healthcare arena and with these large employers, I witnessed firsthand the challenges of managing healthcare for over 10 million employees and retirees. This experience prepared me for the changing, destructive nature of COVID-19 and what it's brought to employers in the United States. Working with these corporate officers, understanding their infrastructures and corporate philosophies,
Sure.
I think really prepared me for today. Through my business life, I've also worked and sought the advice of consulting firms to help me in my strategic thinking. Kevin Snyder, the global managing partner of McKinsey, and Bob Sternfels, a senior partner, described 4 strategic areas that have added to my overall impressions of our current and post-COVID-19 thinking. I like to call it surviving and thriving COVID-19 in the business marketplace, and it's universal and international. But at the heart of it all, Podar, personal lives are being uprooted and affected. I agree with their current assessment and would like to share 3 strategic areas that I feel will help the people of India survive and thrive in a business COVID-19 world. They are recovering revenue, rebuilding operations, and the third one is rethinking the organization. First, let me talk a little bit about recovering revenue. It's a tricky proposition. Balancing a revenue model that has worked in the past but decimated by COVID-19 requires rethinking and rethinking quickly. According to McKinsey in early April, new remote sales models were proving as much as 29% more effective than traditional sales channels. So business leaders should be looking for new revenue streams that complement the new normal.
Absolutely.
They should be also willing to be flexible and be willing to take calculated risks when it comes to new ways of securing revenue streams that could go against conventional wisdom or what they're used to. Businesses should measure financial results over a 90-day period, measuring and comparing financial and sales results between traditional revenue streams and perhaps new and unproven revenue streams that a company is testing. The McKinsey reminds us that this may include launching target campaigns to win back loyal customers, develop customer experiences focused on increased health and safety, adjusting pricing and promotionally based new data, reallocating and spending to proven growth sources. Here's one that I thought was really interesting: reskilling the sales force to support remote selling, creating flexible payment terms, digitizing sales channels, and automating processes to free up sales representatives to sell more. During the current crisis, businesses have worked faster and better than they dreamed possible just a few months ago. Maintaining that sense of possibility will be an enduring source of competitive advantage. The study went on to recommend the need to identify and point and prioritize revenue opportunities. What's important is to identify the primary sources of revenue, and on that basis, make the now or never move that need to happen before the recovery fully starts. Second, rebuilding operations or building renewed operations, resilience is critical. As I read the McKinsey study, it also suggested that successful companies will redesign their operations and supply chains to protect against a wider and more acute range of potential shocks. In addition, they will act quickly to rebalance their global asset base and supplier mix. The once prevalent global sourcing model in product-driven value chains has steadily declined as new technologies and consumer demand patterns encourage change, such as we're seeing in this COVID world. But COVID-19 is really forcing this change. I don't think this would happen had we not had this pandemic. And McKinsey expects this trend to accelerate, actually. Now, McKinsey states that the reinvention and regionalization of global value chains is also likely to accelerate adoption of other levels and levers to strengthen operational resilience, including increased use of external suppliers to supplement internal operations, greater workforce cross-training, which I thought was really interesting, yes, and a dual or even triple sourcing methodology. Developing an agile operating model is another recommendation by McKinsey that is driven by urgency. Marketing and sales leaders are increasingly willing to embrace agile methods. They are getting used to jumping on quick video conference calls to solve problems and give remote teams more decision-making authority. It's also important, of course, for cross-functional teams not to lose sight of the long term and to avoid panic actions. In other words, making knee-jerk decisions, which
Absolutely.
could be a problem.
Very true.
Two strategic areas of focused operations means new and unique internal operational functions. For example, the new normal may completely be different and contrary to traditional ways of doing business. In-office workers are now forced to distance themselves from coworkers, and in most cases requiring companies to close their doors to their own employees. In the new normal, some operational functions can be done off-site and even at home. Others cannot. Systems and IT have a large secured data centers that must be managed, usually run at company offices, but sometimes, of course, off-site. Marketing and sales offices who require group and team strategy meetings are now Zooming, FaceTiming, Google Hangouts, GoToMeeting, and many other video conferencing techniques to do business, just like we're doing today, Podar.
Yeah.
Most likely, no company going forward can carry on methods of the past, and most likely will require what I like to call an organizational makeover. The important thing I think McKinsey is suggesting is that whatever a business decides to do, they must act quickly to stay ahead of their competitors and relevant to their customers and consumers. This takes us to another step deeper into the internal corporate psyche as it pertains to the human resource capital. Remote sales, for example, may have been unheard of for many companies, yet the lockdown of entire countries has become a reality. And it's interesting, Podar, it's forced remote work from home for both large and small companies. It's become a reality and something unthinkable even 6 months ago. The new normal may see less workers sitting at a computer at an office, but more remote work being carried out at homes and offsite locations. Safety and security concerns for companies who depend on their people running their slabs, computer backup systems, and things that can't be always uprooted and moved to a home station need action items in place to guarantee that the business can continue uninterrupted during a crisis. Data centers that have offsite backup systems always continue to be a major plus, but even offsite data centers will need to have plans in place for their protection and security. Third, rethinking the organization. This is very important to me. Companies need to understand the power of interpersonal relationships, what I call perception versus reception in the post-COVID-19 new normal, which will demand a greater respect for the power of interpersonal relationships, not only between coworkers, but up the entire workforce ladder, from executives to mid-level managers to the entire workforce. Thinking interpersonal relationships applies to everyone. Even individuals or small employers under 25 are included, and it would be a tactical error for any organization who wants to survive in a post-COVID-19 world not to be sensitive to the personal side of business. Large and mid-sized employers particularly need to reevaluate how they have been motivating, communicating, and dealing with their own interpersonal relationship skills. Companies have been forced to close their company doors and send their workforces to their homes to work. And with that, they lose some capability to keep employees motivated and accountable. How employees are perceived versus how they are received in the functioning of their work away from the corporate setting may well determine how well the company does financially. Leaders and managers at all levels must find new ways to communicate with their workforce, particularly as they return to a normal work day in an office setting. Never underestimate the power of a loyal workforce by interpersonal relationships that build trust, camaraderie, and loyalty. The new normal may well find that choosing to work from home or places other than the office will require a benefit cost analysis, whatever happens. Here in the United States, for example, Walmart is the first and largest employer to notify 10,000 employees that they will now be working permanently from their homes. The McKinsey research showed that in 2019, a leading retailer was exploring how to launch a curbside delivery business. The plan stretched over 18 months. With the COVID-19 lockdown in the US, it went live in 2 days. I mean, amazing. So I just wanted to repeat those three areas: recovering revenue, rebuilding operations, and rethinking the organization are all important factors in today's world.
That's really great insight, Mr. Gunnell. I must really appreciate the 3 R's what you have mentioned. I would also like to now let me draw your attention to the fact, and I'm sure you must be fully aware with your several trips to India, that we have roughly around 4.5 millions of small and medium companies, and of course large companies, large number of startups we have in India, and the number of startups is just growing. They are hungry for capital, technology, innovation. And they are badly hit by the COVID-19 lockdown. What would be your advice to them, particularly the SME, MSME, and the startups to accelerate and growth?
My advice for small and medium companies is to accelerate the adoption of new digital solutions. According to the McKinsey research, the COVID-19 crisis has accelerated the shift to digital. As I've worked with Reliance Technologies' geo platforms in Mumbai, I've witnessed an accelerated push to move to a digital world. The recent merger of Galileo Financial Technologies with SoFi here in the United States just a few weeks ago demonstrates the incredible push for cashless transactions with fintech technology. So the best companies are going further by enhancing and expanding their digital channels. Absolutely. They're successful using advanced analytics to combine new sources of data, such as satellite imaging with their own insights to make better and faster decisions and strengthen their links to customers. Galileo Financial Technologies, when it was acquired in May by SoFi, was processing 90% of all fintech transactions in the world. Amazing. I agree with McKinsey's report that to survive and thrive amid the economic fallout, companies can build their next normal operations around a revamped approach to spending. A full suite of technology-enabled methodologies is accelerating cost transparency, compressing months of efforts into weeks or even days, if you can believe it. These digital approaches include procurement spend analysis and clean sheeting, end-to-end inventory rebalancing, and capital spend diagnostics and portfolio realization. Companies are also seeking to turn fixed capital costs into variable ones by leveraging as-a-service models. The future of work, defined by the use of more automation and technology, was always coming. COVID-19 has hastened the pace. Employees across all functions, for example, have learned how to complete tasks remotely using digital communication and collaboration tools. In operations, changes will go further with an accelerated decline in manual and repetitive tasks and a rise in the need for analytical and technical support. This shift will call for a substantial investment in workforce engagement and training in new skills, much of it delivered by these new digital tools we're talking about. Lastly, I'd like to talk a little bit about being truthful with your organization and with your customers. As the India flag reminds us, truth alone triumphs. Demand for transparency and honesty is critical in communicating in a post-COVID-19 world. Business leaders and employees need to focus on mutual interests that have a win-win strategy on both sides. Business leaders need to understand, I believe, they need to know their limits. They must have multiple options by thinking outside the box in a post-COVID-19 world. Listen, listen, listen. McKinsey says many leaders are reflecting on how small, nimble teams built in a hurry to deal with COVID-19 emergency made important decisions faster and better on how to grow. These organizations are making the shift from closed systems and one to transactional relationships to digital platforms and networks of mutually beneficial partnerships, which have proven more resilient during the crisis. Every business is now a technology business, and what matters most is a deep understanding of the customer, which is enabled by technology. And this was a remark made by a retail CEO. Accelerate digital adoption to enable reimagination. Refocus digital efforts to reflect changing customer expectations, increase the speed and productivity of digital solutions. I guess technology is the only savior and also the tool to quickly progress from small and medium enterprises to a stable and formidable organization.
It's truly insightful, experience and guidance that you have really offered, Mr. Gunnell. I really thank you for that, and I'm sure a lot of SME and the startup world would really learn from this. Digitization is the only answer, I guess.
Yes.
During our discussions in the last week, for this, when we spoke about the program, in addition to the adoption of technology, you did mention about education in India. Education is very close to my heart, I must say. So could you please dwell upon this subject, which is also important? And I believe education is the biggest leveler. And education is the worst hit sector in the coronavirus. In mid-April, UNESCO reported around 192 countries had closed all schools and universities, affecting more than 90% of the world's learners, students community, almost 1.6 billion children and young people. One of the most important drivers in human capital investment continues to be largely closed. And that's so sad. With largest young population in India, we need large-scale investments and also curriculums, innovative curriculums from the developed economies. We will be soon allowing foreign universities to set up campuses in India How do you really see this change?
You know, a thriving post-COVID world in India with all the changes I've spoken about today will not be sustainable without the investment and focused priorities in the education of India's rising generation. The new normal must include new and innovative efforts to connect higher education and its students, professors, and leaders with higher educational institutions outside of India on a global stage. It's beginning to happen now at MIT World Peace University, located in Pune,
Mhm.
under the leadership of Professor Dr. Vishwanath D. Karad, founder and president, and his son Rahul V. Karad, executive president and secretary general. They've been developing an international approach to bring leaders of Ivy League universities in the United States and other countries in an effort to collaborate synergies with India's educators and universities outside the India education system. Earlier this year, I had the opportunity of meeting with the president of Texas A&M, Michael Young. Along with me was Rual Karad of MIT World Peace University, King Hussein, and Richard Nelson. Mr. Karad presented to Texas A&M's president this very idea of collaborating and exchanging of educational research and relationships. He agreed, and he already has spoken to the student body at MIT World Peace via Zoom. And so I'm really grateful for President Michael Young to immediately embrace that idea. We've also met with officials and educators at the Wharton School at the University of Pennsylvania with the vision of connecting India educators and students to a new educational level of exchange between prestigious universities in India and universities around the globe. I think creating this kind of paradigm shift in how students experience education in a synergistic partnership with universities outside of India will give India students an incredible head start in the business marketplace, thus ensuring a better educated workforce.
That's so true, so true. Thanks for this really insightful observation on education, Mr. Gunnell. Let me now quickly move to the trade relationships between India and US. As you know, US, Germany, and UK continue to be the large investors in India over 2 decades now. And also, India is a big market for the large companies, like also for the small companies. How do you see really this relationship developing now?
Well, what I see in the trade relationship between India and the United States is verified by your own business today. The U.S. has surpassed China to become India's top trading partner, showing greater economic ties between the two countries. I think we need to finalize the free trade agreement between our two countries. According to the director of the Foundation of India Export Organizations, FTA will be the U.S., FTA with the U.S. will be very beneficial for India, as the U.S. is the biggest market for domestic goods and services. He went on to say that India's exports as well as imports are increasing with the U.S., while with China, both are declining. This is happening in the U.S. as well. Our exports as well as imports are declining with China and increasing with India. The U.S. relationship with China is strained at so many levels. I've been to China. It's difficult. They're stealing technology. They're a communist-based ideology and many other issues that trouble the U.S. The main difference is with India, the U.S. is dealing with the largest democracy in the world. Business Today noted that America is one of the few countries with which India has a trade surplus. Now, on the other hand, India has a huge trade deficit with China. There are still major hurdles to cross between the U.S. and India. The U.S. is concerned with its high trade deficit with India, while India is wanting cuts in visa fees, exemption from high duties imposed by the U.S. on certain steel and aluminum products, and greater access for products from sectors such as agriculture, automobile components, and engineering. As I've been to India over 50 times, I think the real change is India's government. The government needs the will to make structural changes to its business laws, regulations, tariffs, bureaucracy, and red tape, not to mention the political whims of parties, which also breeds corruption. As best said by my friend King Hussein, quote, Ashok and I want very much for India to succeed and become a global economic power. We know India has the talent and the brain power, well educated with good work ethic, good business mind, great leadership qualities, and many other desirable qualities. All they need is for the government to get out of the way and unleash their potential. Now is the time for India to seize the opportunity this is unexpected crisis has provided, unquote. I agree with King Hussein. For India, the time is now, and I believe the future economic relationship between the US and India will become one of the greatest partnerships in the world. I don't believe that we will return to business and life as usual before COVID-19. The new normal applies not only to our business life, but our life in general as a whole. So as we look at solutions and outcomes to surviving and thriving post-COVID-19, we cannot afford to think we can return to any pre-COVID-19 notions of how we conduct our lives or how we do our business. I have a renewed hope in the final outcome of surviving this pandemic experience, but caution and remind everyone that there will be a new normal, and how India adapts to it will guarantee India's place as a leading world economic powerhouse, which is, in the end, will benefit its citizens toward an incredible future.
Mr. Gunnell, this is really truly exceptional, and I really appreciate what you all have said. May I request you to give a profound or really a comment on India as a whole, because you have seen India for the several times and so closely. What would be your observation on the current India or India as such?
Well, let me move to maybe more of a philosophical viewpoint of India and its future. I think this applies to any country, and I think it applies to our core human values. And that's the ability to have the ability to worship and have this religious freedom concept in our hearts and in our lives. Religious freedom is a basic human right tied to the success of any economy and in our personal lives is really critical, I think. Religious freedom has never faced more threat than in today's world. Luckily, the largest democracy in the world, India provides this freedom to its people.
Absolutely.
India was founded on this principle. You know, my country, the United States, was founded on this principle as well. In my specific faith, our scripture states, quote, we believe in being subject to kings, presidents, rulers, and magistrates, in obeying and honoring and sustaining the law, unquote. According to my faith, quote, we believe that no government can exist in peace except such laws are framed and held inviolate, as well as secure to each individual the free exercise of conscience, the right and control of property, and the protection of life. We believe that religion is instituted of God and that men are amenable to him and to him only for the exercise of it. Unless their religious opinions prompt them to infringe upon the rights and liberties of others, but we do not believe that human law has the right to interfere in prescribing rules of worship, to bind the conscience of men, nor dictate forms of public or private devotion. That the civil magistrate should restrain crime but never control conscience, should punish guilt but never suppress the freedom of the soul, unquote. I think those principles really are tantamount to and inseparable in our connection of our life as we conduct business and our lives as we conduct them personally. The ability to worship as we choose and the protection of religion, having the freedom to worship the dictates of our own conscience, is and always will be a fundamental right. I think to survive and thrive in a post-COVID-19 world, we should remember that while life is business and business is life is a smart catchphrase, COVID-19 has shown the world that we must be ever diligent, ever innovative, to guarantee a prosperous future for generations to come. And I think that applies to India, it applies to the US, I think it applies to every country around the globe.
Mr. Gunnell, really, very, very thank you to you. My all gratitude and appreciation to you. I must also take this opportunity and thank my close friend, Mr. Ashok Joshi, King Hussein, for his inputs, and also the various insights and inputs that we got from the McKinsey reports. In fact, I must say that in the last 3 months, I have been continuously reading the McKinsey reports and their analysis, and they really provide some incredible insights. Uh,
Absolutely.
yeah. So I really thank you for that, and I must really again once again appreciate the amount of time, valuable time, and the effort that you have put into put this presentation for India Power Talk.
Yeah.
I highly appreciate, I'd like to express my deep gratitude to you for that.
Well, thank you. It was my honor and privilege, truly.
I also would like to thank the Indian Chamber of Commerce and Law Seco community for extending their support. And as usual, last time, let me conclude my vote of thanks with the humble prayer to the Almighty to bless the mankind with the right spirit to fight the coronavirus and restore the world with peace and happiness. Uh, Till then, stay safe, stay happy. Highly appreciate it. It was a pleasure talking to you, Mr. Ganel.
Thank you. We'll talk to you soon. Bye bye now.